Hello friends, the killing of Baba Siddique has brought the rise of gangsterism in India in focus. In fact, the socio-political fabric of India has been significantly influenced by gangsterism, which is characterized by organized crime, violence, and systematic intimidation. Gangsterism in India has a rich history that predates the contemporary notion of mafia syndicates commonly associated with urban criminal organizations. It has developed over centuries, adapting to different social, political, and economic contexts. Join me on a journey through India's rich gangster history, from ancient cult traditions to the formation of criminal syndicates, as we investigate the role of governance, poverty, and political patronage in shaping criminal activities in India. The Thuggee cult emerged as one of the earliest instances of organized crime in India, with bandits operating across the northern and central regions of the subcontinent. The thugs were infamous for their ritualistic murders of unsuspecting travelers. Thugs operated in secret from the 13th to 19th century, believing they were carrying out the will of the goddess Kali, the Hindu deity of destruction and death. William Sleeman, a British historian, documented the thugs' methods extensively. The group followed strict codes and customs, employing strangulation for their killings in a quiet and systematic fashion. They had a dual motive: economic gain through looting and a religious belief that their killings pleased Kali. As Sleeman noted, and I quote, the thugs regarded their work not merely as a livelihood but as a sacred duty. You get this quote from Rambles and Recollections of an Indian Official, published in 1844 by Sleeman. A large-scale initiative was undertaken by the British colonial government in the early 19th century to eradicate the thug menace. Sleeman led the arrest, trial, and punishment of thousands of thugs, resulting in their execution or imprisonment. The British administration's success against the thugs was just the beginning of state intervention to combat organized crime in India. The consolidation of British rule in India during the 19th century brought about a transformation in social and economic structures. The rise of novel forms of gangsterism thrived in urbanization and the growth of port cities like Calcutta, which is now famous as Kolkata, and Bombay, or the present day Mumbai. As these cities grew into major trade hubs, they attracted various criminal syndicates. By the early 20th century, Bombay emerged as the hub of organized crime. Crime syndicates thrived, taking part in various illicit activities such as smuggling, gambling, bootlegging, and prostitution. The British Raj's economic policies enabled criminal organizations to exploit legal loopholes and corrupt officials. During this time, the fusion of criminal syndicates and politics was a defining characteristic. Criminal organizations were frequently supported by politicians and local officials in exchange for money and muscle. Many times, these criminal networks became an extension of the colonial administrative machinery, as sociologist James G. Carrier points out. And I quote him: crime, politics, and corruption were deeply intertwined in colonial India, with crime often functioning as a means of maintaining political power. Unquote. This comes from Carrier's Political Economy of Organized Crime, published in 2000. India faced a new series of challenges after gaining independence in 1947. The subcontinent's partition led to mass migration and the displacement of millions, creating an opportunity for criminal networks to take advantage of the resulting chaos. An influx of refugees in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Kolkata led many to engage in illicit activities to survive. These refugees were a rich source of recruits for the gangsters. The scale and scope of gangsterism in post independence India increased, adjusting to the changing political landscape. Varatharajan Mudaliar, Haji Mastan, and Karim Lala were among the influential gangsters who ruled Mumbai's underworld during the 1950s and 1960s. These people controlled industries such as smuggling, extortion, and protection rackets, often with the silent approval of politicians. Gangsterism in India underwent further transformation because of the economic liberalization policies of the 1990s. The economy's liberalization resulted in creating new avenues for illegal wealth accumulation, such as real estate and thriving Bollywood sector. Gangsters expanded their investments, taking part in various illegal activities such as drug trafficking, human trafficking, and land seizing. During this time, Dawood Ibrahim, the infamous head of the D Company, emerged as one of the most powerful and perilous figures in Indian gangsterism. Ibrahim had connections that extended beyond India's borders, and his role in the 1993 Mumbai bombings was a significant moment in the link between organized crime and terrorism. Despite efforts by the Indian government and organizations like Interpol, Ibrahim has evaded capture since the 1990s. Many parts of the country continue to suffer from the scourge of gangsterism in modern India. Technological advancements and globalization have reshaped organized crime, yet criminality, violence, and political collusion remain enduring elements. The connection between criminals and politicians is one of the most notable aspects of modern day gangsterism. Gangsters are often used by political leaders nationwide to advance their political objectives while evading law enforcement. In exchange, these politicians get financial backing and the force to retain their influence. This relationship has been well documented by Indian investigative journalists such as S. Hossain Zaidi, who wrote extensively about the underworld in his book Mafia Queens of Mumbai. As Zaidi notes, and I quote him, the Indian underworld is inseparable from the country's political and economic systems. Criminals operate with impunity because they have powerful patrons in high places. I get this quote from Zadi's Mafia Queens of Mumbai 2011. Politicians and gangsters in India often form a mutually beneficial alliance to further their own agendas. The motivation behind this collaboration is power, protection, and financial benefit. Gangsters provide muscle power, vote manipulation, and financial backing to politicians in exchange for protection and influence. Both parties have benefited from this well documented nexus many times, and they're still doing it. It is a continuous process, unending. Although the relationship between politics and organized crime in India can be traced back to the colonial era, it became more sophisticated or established after India became independent. During the 1970s and 1980s, gangsters formed strong connections with politicians, helping them gain influence. The case of Haji Mastan, a notorious smuggler in Mumbai during the 1960s and 1970s, serves as one of the earliest examples of this nexus. Mastan gained fame by dominating smuggling operations, especially in the trade of gold and electronics. Yet, what made him unique was his strong connections with local politicians. His wealth was used to finance political campaigns and gain protection from the authorities. Mastan's close ties to political figures not only protected him from legal consequences but also granted him access to the realm of politics. Haji Mastan established the Bharatiya Minorities Suraksha Mahasangh, a political party advocating for minority communities, showcasing the ability of a gangster to make a successful move into politics. His political connections and influence in Mumbai's underworld established him as a power broker in the city's political and criminal scenarios. Dawood Ibrahim and his D Company represent yet another notorious example of the connection between gangsters and politicians. Dawood's ascent in Mumbai's underworld during the 80s and 90s was aided by his connections to political figures. Many politicians, especially in Maharashtra, have been widely reported to have sought help from Dawood's gang to intimidate rivals, rig elections, and secure financial resources for their campaigns. The 1993 Mumbai bomb blasts planned by Dawood Ibrahim demonstrated the level of political patronage that facilitated his activities. Despite being identified as a terrorist and fugitive, Dawood supposedly retained power through his network, which had formed links with political figures. In his book Dongri to Dubai, Hassan Zaidi exposed the connection between political figures and Dawood, explaining how they would protect him in exchange for money and favors. Political leaders, finding it helpful to have gangsters as allies, enabled the D Company to engage in activities ranging from extortion to drug trafficking. Arun Gawali showed how one can make a political shift by capitalizing on their criminal authority. Gawali, once notorious as an underworld don in the 1980s and 1990s, successfully converted his criminal sway into political clout. Gawali won the election in 2004 and became the MLA for the Dagdi Chawl area in Mumbai, which he ruled. Gawali's political success was based on his image as a modern day Robin Hood, taking care of his community despite acquiring wealth and power through illegal activities. His political power guaranteed the safety of his criminal empire. This shows how the lines between gangsterism and politics become blurred in India. The connection between gangsters and politicians has been a persistent problem in states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, where many politicians have criminal records or join forces with gangsters to win elections. Mukhtar Ansari, a gangster turned politician from Uttar Pradesh, was repeatedly elected as an MLA. Voters were not discouraged by his criminal record as he offered protection and favors to certain groups, particularly in Mao. Pappu Yadav from Bihar is another example of the connection between gangsters and politicians. Yadav, known for his criminal past involving organized crime and political violence, surprised everyone by winning elections and forging a successful political path. His ability to control local gangs was a major factor in his success, enabling him to mobilize voters, intimidate rivals, and control resources in the region. Lately, Lawrence Bishnoi's criminal or purported criminal acts have brought him into the spotlight. The most recent event is the murder of Baba Siddique, a powerful politician in Mumbai. Lawrence Bishnoi is a well-known figure in India's criminal underworld. He has engaged in multiple criminal acts including murder and extortion. Known for their sophistication, the Bishnoi gang conducts their operations from behind bars, employing advanced communication methods. Of course, this cannot be done without the complicity of politicians and the police officials. Although there are allegations and speculations regarding his connections with powerful politicians and smugglers, finding concrete evidence to substantiate these claims is frequently challenging. He remains in the public eye because of his gang's connection to high profile crimes such as the assassination of Punjab singer Sidhu Moosewala and the intimidation of Bollywood actor Salman Khan. Now, how do they collaborate? What are the mechanisms of the collaboration? The gangster politician nexus thrives on several mechanisms, such as serving the interests of both parties. Politicians, especially in regions where law enforcement is weak, rely on gangsters to provide muscle power during elections. Gangsters help intimidate rivals, rig elections, and mobilize voters through coercion or bribery. Criminal organizations often finance political campaigns for protection from law enforcement. Gangsters use their ill-gotten wealth to fund campaigns, which allows politicians to outspend their rivals. The real estate sector in cities like Mumbai and Delhi is often controlled by criminal syndicates. Politicians rely on these syndicates to grab land, settle disputes, and ensure favorable outcomes in land related cases. Once politicians get the power, they use their influence to protect their gangster allies from prosecution. Corrupt officials, including the police and judiciary, are often complicit in shielding criminals who have political patrons. The close collaboration between politicians and gangsters has had detrimental effects on Indian democracy and governance. The gangster politician nexus erodes public trust in institutions and undermines the rule of law. Criminals who enter politics or align with politicians often enjoy impunity, making it difficult for law enforcement to bring them to justice. The involvement of gangsters in elections has led to the criminalization of politics in India. A significant number of elected representatives in Indian legislatures have criminal records, which compromise the integrity of democratic processes. The relationship between gangsters and politicians fuels corruption. Politicians use their positions of power to shield their criminal allies, and in return, they benefit from financial support and the ability to manipulate electoral outcomes. Several key factors contribute to the enduring problem of gangsterism in India. Economic disparity and unemployment drive many individuals, particularly in urban slums and rural areas, toward criminal activity. In regions with few economic opportunities, becoming involved in organized crime can be seen as a viable way to escape poverty. The Indian judicial and law enforcement systems have often been criticized for their inefficiency and corruptions. Politicians and police officers are frequently implicated in scandals involving organized crime, which undermines efforts to combat gangsterism. India's entrenched caste system, coupled with regional loyalties, has often contributed to the formation of gangs. Many gangs are organized along caste lines or regional identities, with caste based violence serving as a recruitment tool. The symbiotic relationship between politics and organized crime makes it difficult to address the problem at its root. Gangsters frequently fund election campaigns or help politicians secure votes through intimidation, ensuring they remain immune from legal prosecution. To conclude, gangsterism in India stems from social and economic inequality, political corruption, and centuries old cultural traditions. Organized crime in India has transformed, forming alliances with politicians. Resolving gangsterism in India necessitates efforts beyond law enforcement crackdowns. To combat gangsterism, a comprehensive approach is needed, addressing poverty, governance, the judicial system, and the political criminal nexus. India must confront these issues and mitigate the influence of organized crime to foster a more just and equitable society.